Here's Mike Bagley and Pete Pistone.
Before the top of the hour, back on the morning drive. To the hotline we go. We bring in the crew chief for Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. Steve Letarte is back. Morning, Stevie.
What's going on, guys?
We are well, Steve, and congratulations to your Patriots for moving one step closer to returning to Super Bowl 47, as we just said there in the read.
Yeah. Yesterday was a good day in the Letarte household as far as football goes. It was a fun game to watch for sure. So hopefully we can have success next week again.
Bagman's still bitter about the Redskins going down in flames.
Well, look at it this way, Bagman. Now, that's some friends of mine are Redskins fans, and some other friends of mine are Panthers fans. And the Panthers fans like to poke the Redskins fans, but I tell them all the time, from a football fan from a long time now, it's always better to lose in January than not make it to January. So at least you were there and you had a shot at it.
What's the effect of Grabowski or whatever his name is, the guy that broke his arm again yesterday?
Oh, well, Gronk, man. Gronkowski, he's a great tight end. Fortunately for the Patriots, they have Hernandez as well, who's a spectacular tight end, but they play that two tight end set really well. But, I think that's the beauty of the NFL is everyone has injuries. Every team in the playoffs have injuries, and that shows how good a coaching staff you have to have and how good of offensive, defensive coordinators who can you adjust your game plan? Can you be liquid enough to adjust who you're going to play next week and with a new game plan and still put points on the board?
Well, speaking of injuries, as far as the 88 team is concerned, driver, crew chief, everybody fine, but the old little race car you had there testing, a little worse for wear this morning. What's the extent of the damage, and what's the impact of that testing crash for you guys?
Well, it was unfortunate, the whole situation, but we really didn't receive a whole lot of damage. A little bit of nose damage where we contacted the 9, but, it's really not that big a deal. We were able to test the next 2 days, so I hated it for all those cars that get tore up. It's been a busy off-season, and nobody wanted to tear up cars testing, but, that's an unfortunate part of the sport. You have to go down there, you have to test. I don't think you can just stick your head in the sand and assume it's going to be okay. So we all learn as we go, and I think we learned that these cars are much more sensitive to the push as cars have been in the past. They almost are a lot like a truck. So I think as they run, I think they'll get more and more experience, probably be able to push some, but they definitely don't line up very well, and pushing definitely opens yourself up to a pretty bad situation.
All right, let's tap into your expertise, Steve, because we've had a lot of questions this morning from listeners about the carbon fiber hoods and deck lids and how they held up during some of the contact that we saw at Daytona, and what it'll do for your teams now as you go forward when you have damage, replacing, fixing. How's this working? What's your early observations of the carbon fiber hoods and deck lids?
Well, they seem to be working fine. The deck lid for sure is as rigid really as any steel deck lid we've ever had. How will it repair in an accident? I don't really know, or the hood in an accident, I don't really know, but the sport's changing and the point system's changing where the days of the accidents and repairing your car and coming back and getting a great finish really are few and far between. So I don't know if it'll affect the overall sport very much. The hood, as far as on-track performance, they perform great. How will they perform in a crash? I don't know. I didn't look at too many of the crash cars, but the guys are getting pretty smart, and we'll adapt to it. And after we see how they react, we'll have a good plan to fix them. But we're not too concerned. I think it'll be fine.
Are you able to replace the deck lid or the hood, or will you be able to replace them if they're damaged during a race?
I don't know. I'm going to have to wreck one, and then I will tell you. I think that those questions are still, I'm sure they will. I think they will. The hood probably isn't necessary. People have ran without hoods for years, so I don't think they'll care if you have a hood on or not. But if you'd like to change the hood, I'm sure they'll let you. And as far as the deck lid goes, you're pretty well required to have a deck lid just from an aerodynamic standpoint. So, we'll be going to Daytona with crash deck lids and crash hoods and be prepared to put them on if we need them.
Now, you've told this before, during this process. So we heard Robin Pemberton say this over the weekend. Again, the production of those parts and pieces and other parts and pieces still kind of, I won't say handcuffing, but I think slowing down some teams in the production of new cars. Steve, where are you guys, and do you see that as a problem? Are you guys going to be able to be okay in terms of getting your inventory ready?
Well, without a doubt, it's difficult. I mean, we're basically only have a couple components for the company, so we move them from car to car to car as the cars are being produced. You know, I definitely have more cars than I have hoods and deck lids. So, but, you know, I don't know. I think I'm just kind of old and tired and done this a lot. I don't get too worried about it. It seems like every year there's a reason why we won't have 43 cars at Daytona, or there's a panic of something. And, you know, NASCAR and the teams and the manufacturers always seem to come through. So, you know, it's the same for everyone. You know, I think NASCAR is doing a great job with this situation. I do think it's definitely a pain. I mean, nobody wants to have it, but you can't control things like that. And I think they're managing it very well, keeping it fair for every team the way they're distributing the parts. So I think now it comes down to you as a race team. You know, how smart can you do it? Can you manage your inventory? Can you find a system that allows you to build your cars with the fewer parts that you have? And I think we've come up with that. So, you know, we're all steam ahead trying to get cars done.
Well, you know, Hendrick Motorsports is one of the best prepared teams in the entire garage area. You guys are buttoned up. You guys have forethought. You're planning down the road. Cars come through production. They are ready to go. You guys have proven that time and time again, but it sounds like that with the waiting for these parts and pieces, obviously, I don't want to say it's putting you behind the eight ball, but it's obviously a challenge. How much out of your comfort zone is the lack of parts and pieces taking you guys?
Well, it's completely out of our comfort zone because for years we were able to just build our own parts and pieces. So this is a completely different set of circumstances waiting on someone. But we'll get it figured out. I mean, where are we at? I mean, you know, our Daytona 500 car is still in the steel rack. So, you know, that's a car that we would like to have in the tunnel by now. You know, a car we'd like to have on the racetrack down in Daytona, or at least at a straight line test. You know, I don't think any of that's really going to happen. We'll get it to the wind tunnel, but it'll probably be early February, maybe the week before the 500, before we get our 500 car really in the tunnel and see what it has. But, you know, it's kind of the same for everyone. So, you know, I've learned, Mr. Hendricks kind of raised us to, you know, you can make excuses or you can just look at the excuses as just challenges and attack them and try to go around them. And I think that's what we're going to try to do.
You just said that normally you make your parts and pieces and you're not making these.
Correct.
Why? And why are you not doing that? Where are they coming from? And the fans want to know why the delay in getting them. Why all of a sudden, not necessarily an embargo, but obviously they're scarce. Why is all this happening? Where does it come from, and why can't you make your own?
Well, I think there's a lot of answers to that. You know, why don't we make our parts and pieces? Well, with the new car and NASCAR, you know, they have the job of policing the sport. And it was easier when all four makes had the same shapes. And now that the four makes have, or now three makes have very different shapes, they have now put the responsibility of consistency to the manufacturer. The manufacturer being Chevrolet, Toyota, or Ford, you know, so Chevrolet is our manufacturer and we love to work with them, but what we're learning is they have the responsibility now to provide a mass, you know, a vast majority of the pieces we need, and that's new. And anytime you change how you go about parts and pieces, it becomes a little more complicated. So, you know, a tremendous amount of this car are stamped sheet metal. Therefore, we have to wait on General Motors, and they actually were a little behind in October and November, but they're caught up pretty well. But the hoods are carbon fiber, so Chevrolet doesn't produce a carbon fiber hood. They've hired outside vendors to do that. And then the deck lid is the part that we think we're all waiting on the most, and it's a common deck lid for all four or all three manufacturers, and it's been hired to a company in South Carolina, and it's just a lot of work. And you know, why is it behind? I don't know. You know, that fact really doesn't matter much to me. I can't change that. I just work with the details we have. But, you know, the sport is big. People forget 43 cars, you know, so that means, you know, for me to have 3 deck lids, that means they would have had to build about 135 deck lids. So that's a lot of deck lids. So, you know, I don't know the reason why it's slowed down. I just know it is. And the parts are trickling in, though. They're coming slowly but surely. And, you know, we just hope to have enough to get the season off right.
You know, you mentioned Hendrick Motorsports and the size and scope of the organization, Steve, and it got me thinking to tie it into your football team. I was reading the Patriots are going to the AFC Championship game for the 7th time in the last 12 years. Now, I mean, for the rest of us, you know, that's terrible. But if you're a Patriots fan, it's a pretty good time to be a Patriots fan. There's a level of excellence that's expected with that race team, like there's a level of excellence that's expected with you guys at Hendrick Motorsports with 11 Sprint Cup trophies there in Mr. H's office. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that pressure and that stress? And in your case, also, you happen to be crew chiefing for the sport's most popular driver.
Well, I think I'd have a much more interesting answer if I'd worked somewhere else. I would be able to say, well, where I used to work or what other teams do or this is what I think it could be. This is all I know. I've worked at Hendrick Motorsports since I was 16 years old. The first year I ever worked at Hendrick Motorsports was 1995. We won the Cup Championship with Jeff, so I've been here for all 11 of them. So this is life to me. I expect it to be like this at every race team. I don't know it to be any different, so I can't really answer that question. It's just this is what I consider NASCAR racing, and I'm sure it's different at other companies or different teams. I've been very fortunate not to have to see that or feel that. So I guess it's kind of like you only know how you've been raised in your family by your parents, you know, what you think is normal, whether you have dinner together or you don't eat dinner together or whether you're, you know, if you have a curfew or not, whatever tendencies you've been raised with, that's all you really know. Well, this company is, I've been raised here since I was 16 years old, so this is all I know. And, you know, I do understand the demands of performance at a company like ours, but you know, if you're going to let success scare you away from trying, you know, very hard to get it, then this is definitely not the company for you.
We have spoken with you in years past where in the off season you've told us that the team has basically, for the lack of a better terminology, done a gut check. You know, everybody has to ask themselves difficult questions, and you have to be honest with yourselves and all that. You had a pretty successful 2012. Obviously, it didn't end the way you'd like. What has been the off-season download session been like amongst driver, crew chief about how to make that 88 team better, making the chase, and being a threat to win the championship at the end of this upcoming season?
Well, we've had, you know, lots of very productive meetings. I have a laundry list of items we intend to try to improve on as a team. I have a laundry list of items I try to improve on as an individual, areas that I feel I let the team down last year. I know Dale has a list as well. We helped each other generate our lists. You know, we've had a little bit of turnover within the team, nothing more than normal, but you always have turnover. We had a front-end mechanic go to Junior Motorsports to be a car chief on the Nationwide cars. You know, we've had people move around, which is great. You know, I got my office because people moved around. You know, if people never moved around, no one would ever get promoted or do anything different. So there's always change. But, you know, unless you win 36 races in the championship, I believe you can always get better. And I think we can get better as a race team. And it's very scary to change because as you have successful years, you don't want to change the wrong things. But, you know, kind of to stay the same is really not moving forward. It's actually moving backwards. So we work very hard to continue improving on our team and how we go about our business and try to kind of set the standard for, at least for ourselves, each and every week. And that's it's hard to do, especially when you have improved years, but one race and making the chase, 12th in points, is definitely not the year we're looking to have. We need to have much more success than that, and we have to find a way to go about and get that.
All right, so what are you going to be looking for this weekend at Charlotte, Steve? I mean, a lot of folks feel that this is maybe even a more important test than the one you had at Daytona because there are so many downforce mile-and-a-half tracks on the schedule.
Well, I think this Charlotte test is going to be really important. You know, we went in December. It was a little unfortunate. It was so cold out. The track had so much grip. It seemed like everything worked. Plus, there were some question marks on the rules and the alignments of the cars, and I think we're a month closer to the actual rules. And I think the turnout will be very big. I think there'll be a lot of teams, and this will kind of give you an idea of where you stack up, what you need to work on. You know, there are a lot of mile-and-a-half tracks without a doubt, so this will kind of set the course of our next 3 or 4 weeks. You know, if this doesn't go as well as it should, we potentially might go to Nashville and keep working on it. If we find some pretty good speed here, then I think we can come back to the shop and focus more on car builds and get our inventory up. So, you know, there's a lot of work that's gone into the Charlotte test. It continues to go on, and it'll go on all the way until we unload Thursday morning, and then it'll be time to go on track. And kind of the same thing, work through our list. You know, we're going to try not to get caught up with the timing and scoring too much as the fans, that disappoints the fans. But, you know, our goal to Charlotte is not to go there and be the fastest car in Charlotte. Our goal to go to Charlotte is to learn as much as we can in 2 days to give us the ammunition we need to continually be fast through the beginning of the year.
What do you like most about this new car, and what perhaps maybe is something or the things that aren't necessarily your favorite about this new car?
Well, what I like best, without a doubt, is the appearance of the car. I was down there at Daytona, and as the cars rolled by the garage area, it just, you know, I love racing, and to see these cars come by, and their different looks and different appearances, and the manufacturers have done such a good job with their decal packages and their shapes on the, not just the nose now the whole body has shape to it, that they are such an appealing car to the eye that I think that is, I mean, that's cool. I mean, to have cool sport, you have to have cool cars. And I think we have cool cars this year, and I think that's just a great thing. What disappoints me the most is I think as every year as technology gets bigger and bigger, NASCAR has an obligation to try to keep the box as small as possible to give everybody a fair chance. And I that goes against what I like. I like a really open rule book where you can do a ton of stuff. It seems like every year we lose tools to work on the race car. Every year stuff becomes more and more and more structured or sanctioned, and I don't think that's just NASCAR. I think that's sports in general. The NFL adds a rule every 3 or 4 weeks is a new rule, and it's the same in NASCAR. So, I don't think it's a NASCAR thing. I think that's just technology. That's the world evolving. But as an old school racer, I really liked it when my rule book was a little more open. I had more areas to work. Now there's just not a lot of wiggle room. And that's good if you're really fast. But if you're slow, it just feels like there's nothing what to change to try to get better, and that's going to be a struggle this year. But it was that year. 5 years ago, we thought we had nothing we could change, and look how far we've come in 5 years. So it's just the start of a new year.
Well, the fans feel you on that. I mean, the fans don't like the fact the box is getting smaller either, because it takes your opportunity to brainstorm new ways of making your car go fast. I'm putting this politically correct, obviously. It gives you a chance. It actually reduces the opportunity you have to explore about how you can, stretch the boundaries of that rule book. Do you see us going back to that day where the crew chief has more input, or do you see us continuing forward down a path where that box is going to get smaller and smaller?
Yeah, I think that'd be a better question for NASCAR than me. I don't see the box ever getting any larger. I think, I learned a long time ago, be careful what you wish for. I know the fans think they want a bigger box, but they would say that until Jimmy Johnson and Chad Canals found something and won 18 races, or Matt Kenseth hit on something with his new team at Gibbs and won 22 races. And, that can happen. As the box gets bigger, someone can find an advantage that just dominates the sport. Right now the parity is unbelievable. You go to the racetrack and the entire field is within 3 or 4 tenths of a second. And that proves that how equal all this equipment is. And that what that does do, though, and the one thing I do like about it, is it forces the crew chief to now, how are you going to win? It's not always about being faster on the racetrack. Can you have better pit stops? Can you perform better? Can you take advantage of the restarts? Can you take advantage of fuel strategy? It has forced the crew chief to look into other avenues to gain advantages on the racetrack other than just in the race car. So that's an area that I do enjoy, but you got to be careful what you wish for. I think NASCAR's done a good job of giving a level playing field. They've done a good job of trying to keep up with race teams. There's only one NASCAR and there's 43 race teams, and they're definitely going to be outnumbered. And, they've done a good job of trying to stay ahead of us with the rules. So we all have the same rule book. We just need to work within it and try to find speed.
Follow him on Twitter, @Steve Letarte. Online, SteveLetarte.com. Dale Jr.'s crew chief taking time to join us this morning. Appreciate the time. Congrats, I guess, on this Patriots mess, and we'll see what you got next weekend.
Oh my God,
man! That was close to sincere. It
no,
on the edge of meaningful. It really did. But but here's the beauty, though. I'm glad you hate us. It's kind of like, that's fine. The more haters, that's fine. I was a Patriots fan well before that stat that Pete read, when we didn't know the AFC Championship game even was played every year. So the last decade's been a lot of fun, and hopefully this year we can have one more win than we had last year.
Just real quick, before we go, you just made an interesting comment that I'm glad you hate us. Now, obviously, you're talking from a football perspective. You love your fans, and you love the 88 fans. Do you embrace those that don't like the 88, that don't necessarily care for you or Dale Jr., or do you embrace the following more?
We're always going to embrace our fans that love us the most, but I love the fact that people don't like us. I'm a sports fan, and there are some teams I despise as much as the teams that I love. That's what makes sports sport.
Yes, right.
And I love it. Pete and I are good friends. We'll go to dinner. We'll hang out. But if he thinks I'll ever cheer for one of his teams from the so-called sports town that he's from, compared to my Boston sports fans, we're never going to agree, ever. But that's good. That's what makes sports sports. That's why people go. That's why people watch on TV. And that's what makes, NASCAR such a great sport, is you have so many options to choose from. So, I love people that don't like my sports teams. I'm thankful that there are people that don't like the race team, because it gives the people that do love our race team that little bit of motivation to cheer just a little bit louder. So you got to drown out the other ones.
Hey, take that so-called sports town talk and shove it up your Patriots helmet there, pal. Take it easy.
That's how it is. That's how it is. Especially if you're from a true sports town. there's nothing like it, is there, Pete?
No, it's the best. And, it's funny because Mike, obviously a Redskins guy, but when you live in Atlanta, that's not a town that embraces its teams.
We are the
like
most
Boston and
abysmal
Chicago.
sports town on the planet. We're actually, you know what? In my opinion, I think Atlanta is the most awful, worst sports town on the planet because they don't embrace their teams. They don't embrace them whatsoever.
See, sports are so good that we can have an argument about towns, not even teams. We can tell you which town is more important. So
You're right. You're right.
Listen, that's what makes sports sports. I mean, I love that I get to work in sports. Love it every day. But I'm also a huge fan, and I love my stick and ball sports too. And fortunately, the next 3 weeks for me, I don't have races, so I'm going to be glued to the TV on Sunday afternoons.
At Steve Letarte, at SteveLetarte.com. Stevie, thank you so much for the time. We'll talk next week.
All right, guys. Thanks.
See you, man.
See you. That's crew chief for Dale Earnhardt Jr. Interesting little discussion there. You're right about sports. I couldn't help but go with the bonus question because, he